Hello and welcome to In Depth. I'm Tina Jha. In April 2010, Wikileaks founder Julian Assange made headlines across the world when Wikileaks dumped thousands of top secret documents relating to the US administration. These documents included classified military reports from Afghanistan revealing covert anti-Taliban operations and unreported Afghan civilian deaths at the hands of NATO forces. The revelations earned him praise from supporters who hailed him as a free campaigner of speech. But for America, Assange became a dangerous figure who undermined security and endangered lives by revealing information on sources, intelligence techniques, and key infrastructure sites. For nearly a decade, the United States has been trying to get its hands on Assange, who faces charges of espionage in the country. But since 2012, Julian Assange had taken refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London to avoid arrest and extradition to Sweden over a sexual assault case that was later dropped. But his 7-year-long stay at the Ecuadorian embassy came to an end on 11th April with his arrest after his hosts withdrew asylum granted to him since 2012. On the show today, we talk about Julian Assange, the cases against him that led to his arrest, and why did Ecuador withdraw asylum granted to him. Besides, we also trace Julian Assange's journey from a computer programmer to a hacker and then going on to become a fugitive. Wikileaks co-founder Julian Assange was arrested from the Ecuadorian embassy in London by the Metropolitan Police. This after Ecuador withdrew Assange's diplomatic asylum, leading to his arrest. Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno accused Wikileaks of leaking Vatican documents. His accusations against Assange also included blocking security cameras within the embassy, accessing security files, and also confronting guards. Assange now faces US federal conspiracy charges related to one of the largest ever leaks of government secrets. The United Kingdom will decide whether to extradite him to the United States to answer the conspiracy charges.
Wikileaks co-founder Julian Assange is facing extradition to the United States after he was forcibly dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London on Thursday. After almost spending 7 years in the embassy, he was arrested after Ecuador revoked his political asylum and invited Metropolitan Police officers inside their Knightsbridge premises. After his arrest, the 47-year-old Australian national was initially taken to a central London police station before appearing in court. He took refuge in the embassy in 2012 to avoid extradition to Sweden over a sexual assault case that has since been dropped.
Well, as you may know, he was charged, he was wanted by the Swedish police on 2 sexual harassment cases. And he fled into the Ecuadorian embassy in London and asked for asylum. And in the past 7 years, he's been living in the embassy under the safety protection of the Ecuadorian government. However, the Ecuadorian government changed a year ago, and the new Ecuadorian president decided that he did not want to provide that type of safety, provide him safe haven. So once the Ecuadorians withdrew that safety, then it was possible for the British police to enter the embassy and extract him and bring him under arrest.
At a central London police station, Assange was further arrested at the request of the US seeking his extradition over conspiracy charges related to one of the largest ever leaks of government secrets. He faces up to 5 years in US prison if convicted on the charges of conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. Reacting to the development, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said Assange would receive the same consular support as any other citizen.
Julian Assange will get the same consular support and assistance that any other Australian would receive. People's fame and doesn't make any difference on the impact of how these decisions are made. He's an Australian citizen. He'll have that support.
The extradition process itself is a matter between the United States and the United Kingdom, but we have also been provided with that advice from the United Kingdom. Australia, as you have indicated, is completely opposed to the death penalty, and that is a bipartisan position and one which we have continued to advocate.
The UK will decide whether to extradite Assange in response to allegations by the Department for Justice that he conspired with former US intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to download classified databases. Assange was also convicted of breaking bail terms by London court and will face a maximum sentence of 12 months in prison. In the court, Assange pleaded not guilty to the 2012 charge of failing to surrender to the court. Assange's lawyer Jennifer Robinson said they would be fighting the extradition request.
We will be contesting and fighting extradition. We've requested that he now gets medical treatment. He's been refused medical treatment for the past 7.5 years, 7 years since being inside the embassy. We will be fighting extradition and he'll be brought before the court again within the next month.
Assange set up Wikileaks in 2006 with the aim of obtaining and publishing confidential documents and images. The organization hit the headlines 4 years later when it released footage of US soldiers killing civilians from a helicopter in Iraq. Former US intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning was arrested in 2010 after disclosing more than 7 lakh confidential documents, videos and diplomatic cables to the anti-secrecy website. She said she only did so to spark debates about foreign policy, but US officials said the leak put lives at risk. Manning was found guilty by a court-martial in 2013 of charges including espionage. However, her jail sentence was later commuted. Manning was recently jailed for refusing to testify before an investigation into Wikileaks' role in revealing the secret files. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Julian Assange's arrest drew sharp reactions from his supporters as well as those who oppose him. Reacting to the news, US President Donald Trump said he knew nothing about Wikileaks, adding that he did not have an opinion about the arrest of Assange, who faces the prospect of extradition to the United States. Trump's response was a clear departure from his previous stand in 2016 when he had praised Assange and also called Wikileaks a treasure trove. UK Prime Minister Theresa May said Julian Assange's arrest shows that no one is above the law. May also welcomed the cooperation of Ecuador's new government in getting Assange evicted. Russia said it sees Assange's detention as a violation of journalists' rights and freedom of speech and will raise the issue at the international level.
I know nothing about Wikileaks. It's not my thing. And I know there is something having to do with Julian Assange. I've been seeing what's happened with Assange, and that will be a determination, I would imagine, mostly by the Attorney General. I don't really have any opinion. I know the Attorney General will be involved in that, and he'll make a decision.
But I would like to thank the Metropolitan Police for carrying out their duties with great professionalism and to welcome the cooperation of the Ecuadorian government in bringing this matter to a resolution. Mr. Speaker, this goes to show that in the United Kingdom, no one is above the law.
Этот случай, который уже вошел в историю, как я уже сказала, попрание прав и журналистов, и, конечно, удар по свободе слова. И, конечно, и в качестве такого ярчайшего примера в этом смысле.
Meanwhile, Wikileaks has condemned the Ecuadorian and British governments for arresting Julian Assange. Assange supporters in several countries, including Ecuador as well as Australia, protested and called for Assange's immediate release with the slogan, "Free the truth, free Assange, do not shoot the messenger."
Have abandoned the...
Bring home Julian! Bring home Julian! Bring home Julian!
Britain is very much in the American sphere of influence, and so Same with Ecuador as well. Ecuador, as far as I know, they send a huge amount of exports to the US, or they have a very close trade relationship with them. And I think they were worried that Julian Assange was jeopardizing that. And so that's probably the long-term reason why they've allowed him to be taken away by the British state today.
Time for a short break on the program. We'll be right back. Do stay with us.
Grandfather told that he escaped by hiding himself under the stage. Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu and Dr. Satyapal, they were to preside that meeting, but they were arrested on the 10th of April actually.
We cannot understand Jallianwala Bagh in isolation. It has to be seen in the context of the political developments in India at that time, and also what was happening in Punjab.
Welcome back. You're watching In Depth. So after spending 2,487 days in the Ecuador embassy in London, Julian Assange was arrested on 11th April on charges of breaching his bail conditions of 2012. His arrest came after the Ecuador embassy in London withdrew its asylum granted to Assange. The Wikileaks founder now faces a sentence of up to 12 months. He also faces extradition to the United States of America for alleged computer hacking and leaking highly classified documents. Assange supporters call him a campaigner for truth, but many criticize him for endangering lives by putting sensitive information out into the public domain. In our next report, we look at the journey of Julian Assange and the multiple charges against him. Born on 3rd July 1971 in Queensland, Australia, Julian Assange was a journalist, computer programmer and activist. Assange had an unusual childhood, spending most of his early years traveling with his mother. He ended up attending roughly 37 different schools growing up and was frequently homeschooled. He studied programming, mathematics and physics at the college level in Australia, but did not complete a degree. Assange discovered his passion for computers as a teenager, and at the age of 16, he got his first computer as a gift from his mother. Before long, he developed a talent for hacking into computer systems. In 2006, Assange began work on Wikileaks, a website intended to collect and share confidential information on an international scale. The site officially launched in 2007 and operated out of Sweden because of the country's strong laws on protecting a person's anonymity. Later that year, Wikileaks released a US military manual that provided detailed information on the Guantanamo detention center. Assange acquired international attention in April 2010 when Wikileaks released footage showing US soldiers shooting dead 18 civilians from a helicopter in Iraq. This information was provided to Wikileaks by whistleblower and former US Army soldier Chelsea Manning. Soon after, Sweden issued an arrest warrant for Assange on 2 separate charges of rape and molestation. Assange claimed that both encounters were consensual and he feared being extradited from Sweden to the United States following the leaks. In December 2010, Assange was arrested in London but was given bail after his supporters paid £240,000 in cash and sureties. In 2012, the UK Supreme Court ruled Assange be extradited to Sweden to face questioning over the allegations. But Assange was granted political asylum by Ecuador and began his stay at the country's embassy in London. The South American nation said it granted him asylum because his human rights might be violated if he was extradited. In August 2015, Swedish prosecutors dropped their investigation into the alleged rape because of time restrictions. Meanwhile, as Assange's case continued to get international attention, a UN panel ruled that Assange has been arbitrarily detained by UK and Swedish authorities. Soon after, Assange filed an appeal to a Swedish court, arguing that the countries must comply with the UN panel's findings. In 2017, former US President Barack Obama announced the decision to free Chelsea Manning, prompting speculation that Assange will end his self-imposed exile. At a press conference, Assange said he would go to the United States provided he is not arrested. Assange's appeal was rejected by the United States, saying his arrest is a priority for the government. The same year in December, Assange was granted citizenship by Ecuador. However, in October 2018, Assange confirmed that he will launch legal action against the government of Ecuador, accusing it of violating his fundamental rights and freedoms. Later in December, Assange's lawyer rejected an agreement announced by Ecuador's president to see him leave the Ecuadorian embassy. Assange was arrested on Thursday in London after his diplomatic status was revoked.
See, America is a very powerful country. Australia, he is an Australian citizen, but Australia immediately said, we have nothing to do with this. We can't protect you. Ecuador at that time had a leftist government. And many governments in Latin America have very strong feelings against the United States because United States government and CIA time and again interfere in their internal politics. There are many times coup and what different political reasons. So Ecuador was a country which was willing to, in a way, challenge the United States and accept Assange as a political refugee in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. And later in, I think 2017, he also got Ecuadorian nationality.
After his arrest, Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno said the country had reached its limit with the behavior of Assange. The country accused him of engaging in political activities which are not allowed when claiming asylum. Ecuador claims Assange is still linked to Wikileaks and therefore involved in interfering in internal affairs of other states. Ecuador's allegations against Assange also include blocking security cameras at the embassy, accessing security files and confronting guards. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. As an Australian citizen, Julian Assange is entitled to consular protection by the Australian government. The Australian Prime Minister has confirmed that Assange will receive consular assistance, but he won't be given any special treatment. It has also conveyed its stand that Britain would not agree to extradition if an individual would face the death penalty, which means Assange won't be extradited to the United States of America if he faces capital punishment. In our next report, let's understand what happens next following the Wikileaks founder's arrest in London.
WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange faces US federal conspiracy charges related to one of the largest ever leaks of government secrets. UK will decide whether to extradite Assange in response to allegations by the Department of Justice that he conspired with former US intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to download classified database. He faces up to 5 years in US prison if convicted on the charges of conspiracy to commit computer intrusion.
We have a number of legal stages to go through. So he now will go before a British court who will have to decide whether or not to extradite him to the United States. That will be a big barrier because British courts in the past have refused extradition on humanitarian grounds. Even if he is extradited, it is important to realize that the indictment filed against him by the American government is largely, but not only, about his provision and protection of sources for the WikiLeaks documents, but protection of sources is normally guaranteed under US freedom of press Supreme Court rulings and the Constitution, so it will be very difficult for them to get even a US court necessarily to indict him, at least on those issues. As far as we know, Assange was not responsible for breaking and entering the US secret files. That was done by Manning. He only helped and propagate them across the world. So Assange is actually, I would argue, in a better legal position than most people realize, but it could take many years before that is settled.
Assange, however, denies sexual assault allegations in Sweden, saying he suspected them to be politically motivated ploy for Sweden to extradite him to the US, where he feared he could face the death penalty. It is important to understand what were the Swedish charges and could they be revived. In 2010, a Swedish prosecutor issued the European arrest warrant requesting Assange's transfer to Sweden to face sexual assault allegations, which he denies. In 2016, Assange was questioned by Swedish authorities by a video link while he remained in the Ecuadorian embassy. In 2017, they closed their investigation. After Assange was arrested and removed from the embassy, the lawyer for one of the complainants indicated she would ask the prosecutor to reopen the case as the statute of limitations on the alleged offence does not expire until 2020. As of April 12th, Sweden's prosecution authority is formally reviewing the case and could renew its request for extradition. What legal obligations does Britain have to extradite Assange to Sweden or the US? The UK, as a member of the European Union, is obliged to execute an European arrest warrant. The law on EAW is similar to extradition treaties. The US-UK extradition treaty does not include a list of extraditable offences, but allows for extradition for any non-political offence for which both sides have criminalised the behaviour and which carries a sentence of at least 1 year in prison. Espionage and treason are considered core political offences, which is why the US request is limited to the charge of computer fraud. Conspiracy to commit an extraditable offence is covered in the US-UK treaty as it is in the EAW. Assange may legally challenge his extradition either to the US or to Sweden. Such challenges could take months or even years, particularly if Assange applies to the European Court of Human Rights, arguing that an extradition request involved a human rights violation. Given Assange's previous conduct and the likelihood that he will be sentenced to prison for failure to surrender to the court, he will probably remain in a UK prison until all legal avenues are exhausted. Australia also has certain legal obligation to Assange. As an Australian citizen, Assange is entitled to consular protection by the Australian government, which means staff from the Australian High Commission in London will provide support for him in the legal process. However, both Foreign Minister Marise Payne and Prime Minister Scott Morrison have declined to provide details on the basis that the matter is before the courts. One possibility is that Assange will serve his sentence for failing to surrender to the court, after which the UK will deport him to Australia. At that point, it is possible the US could request extradition from Australia, and the US-Australian extradition treaty would apply. The US charges would most likely be covered, although not specifically mentioned in the treaty. As with the US-UK treaty, political offences are excluded and an extradited person can only be tried for the offence in the extradition request or a related offence, and in any event not for an offence not covered by the treaty. The treaty specifies that neither Australia nor the US is obliged to extradite its own nationals but may do so. The fact that Australia has the option to refuse extradition purely on the ground of Assange's nationality could lead to intense pressure on the government to do just that. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
So that's it from us in today's edition of In Depth. You can also watch our program online on YouTube and Twitter. And don't forget to send your feedback and suggestions about our program. Thank you very much for your time.